right, well, welcome everyone. It looks like we've got a great group of folks that are joining us for today's overview about Foundation Trust grants. My name is Lauren Lietzau. I am the manager at the Foundation Trust, and I'll be the one that you'll be interacting with probably the most if you do end up submitting a letter of inquiry. And we also have our trustee and executive director, Dr. Joseph Spinazzola, on the call with us today as well.
Hey, folks.
So today we just wanted to take a chance to welcome some folks from our target communities who are running organizations in our priority tracks and give you a sense of what we do, as well as offer up a chance to ask any questions about our grant application process or the work that we do. So it'll just be kind of an intro conversation. I thought we might do just a quick intro, just your name and your organization, the city that you're joining us from, just so that we can have a quick sense of who all is with us on the call. So maybe we can start, let's see, do we have Liz Cohen with us?
Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Cohen. I'm the executive director of the Children's Room. We're a child bereavement organization that serves families throughout Eastern Massachusetts who had a child or a parent who died.
Welcome, Liz. Thanks for joining us. Is someone from Apollinaire on with us today? Is it Allison?
Yes, hi, I'm Allison with Apollinaire Theater in Chelsea.
Thank you for joining. Do we have Diana DeLeo with us today?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Diana DeLeo and I'm with the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Salem.
Welcome. Do we have Jennifer from the Women's Friends Society?
Hi everyone, I'm Jen LaJoy. I'm from the Women's Friends Society in Salem, and we provide affordable housing for women in transition and a historic house in Salem.
How about Victoria from Safer Outside?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victoria Massoni. I work in a brand new nonprofit group called Safer Outside in Salem, and our mission is to create outdoor learning spaces for the elementary public schools in the Salem School District. And we are partnered with the Salem Education Foundation.
See, Brendan, is that you up in the corner up here for me?
Yep, that's me. I'm Brendan Walsh, and I'm a board member of Salem Children's Charity, which is attempts to meet the needs of Salem school children and their families in times of crisis and in times of need. We've worked with the Boys and Girls Club in the past and a few other organizations like that. We raise money with one fundraiser every year, and then we look for fine people like yourselves to maybe help us out.
Great, well, welcome. Who's joining us from Urban Media Arts?
That's me, Osa Schwab. And yes, I'm from UMA, Urban Media Arts, formerly known as MATV. And we're located in Malden. We help individuals and businesses and community groups create, use, and showcase media that benefits the community. We also do a lot of support and promotion of the arts and artists as important connectors of community.
Great, welcome. Elsa Bell?
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Elsa Bell Rincon. I'm the founder of the Welcome Immigrant Network in Salem. And we are an all-volunteer group that supports the North Shore's immigrant community through orientation and advocacy. Lately, we've been doing a lot of direct financial assistance and supermarket gift cards to immigrant families, undocumented immigrant families that do not qualify for other benefits, in addition to connecting them to resources, referrals, and structuring our own programming.
Great, well, welcome. Do we have Mike with us as well?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Mike Ring. I am the Development Associate of Family and Children's Service. We support immigrants, families, and youth in our Chelsea and Lynn locations, and we have a variety of youth programs and in-home family and out-of-home family programs.
Great, welcome, Mike. And then is there anyone I missed? It looks like we have somebody that dialed in as well. I want to make sure I catch everybody.
Hi, this is Julia Bethman, and I am a grant writer, and I'm working with North Shore CDC and also Healing of Youth Working for Change.
Great. Well, welcome. Is there anybody else that I missed? All right, great. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And we may have a chance to dig into a couple of other details as we kind of get into things, and you can share a little bit more about your specific situation in the context of questions and things to see if it'll make sense for us to all partner together. But I'll go ahead and pull up some slides so that we can have a chance to all be on the same page. So let's see here. So I appreciate everybody taking time out of your day when it's so beautiful outside. So hopefully everybody will get a chance to hop outside after this and enjoy the sunshine. So let's go ahead and dive in. My computer's lagging, sorry. There we go. All right, so a little bit about the Foundation Trust, and I'll just kind of go through here, and Joseph, if you want to jump in with any additional details or anything, of course, feel free. We are a private operating foundation that was founded in 2017. We primarily serve the greater Boston area. We'll talk a little bit about our geographic scope in a moment here, but just to give you a sense of what we do, we really have a commitment to uplift vulnerable individuals and underrepresented communities. So that's kind of the crux of what we do, but that kind of splits out into a number of different areas that has a lot of overlap with what you do. And we partner with the smaller folks, so the small to medium-sized nonprofits and municipal run programs that are public benefit, and partner on programming, and it can be—
Can I interrupt you?
Yes, of course.
Is this slide available on your website?
It's not yet, but it will be right after, and I'll be happy to send it out to the participants as well.
Thank you.
Sure. So, but the idea when it was first founded by Dante D'Aso was to have this foundation kind of fill the gaps of what larger foundations were doing. So that's why we go and partner with folks like you. We also have kind of a national and international arm in that we are actually an operating foundation, so we can get involved in some programming and some resource development on our own. And we have in-house expertise that we'll talk about in a little more detail that we're able to leverage both in partnership with you, but also in the development of other resources. And so one of the other focuses of the foundation is to improve the understanding and response to trauma and adversity, which is our track one, by developing and distributing educational resources. So one example of that, we, about this time last year, developed some resources around coping with isolation and the impacts of kind of the stressors that were being exacerbated by the COVID pandemic. And so we're able to release those, and that's been viewed in over 163 countries. So do have some pretty significant reach as well, just beyond our region. So here are some of the communities that we have been involved in the past. We've awarded over 500,000 grants to date. We also have scholarships from elementary school all the way up through graduate school. And so those are things that we have partnered with specific schools, with parochial schools in the area. And then we have a scholarship with BU. And as I mentioned before, we also have those educational resources. To give you a sense of where we've worked in the past, the ones that are highlighted in green are the cities that we've had activities and had partnerships in the past. I know it's a little small to see, but we wanted to be able to capture the full range of what we've done here in Eastern Mass. And then we kind of will zoom in here on our core area. And so these areas really are where we are spending most of our energies. So you'll see where those have been large gifts or multi-year grants. And so those are things where, you know, we have an extended partnership with someone. The grants are what we do on our annual basis, as well as small gifts. I'll speak a little bit to the small gifts program because that might be relevant to some of you as well. and then the scholarships as well. So we are based in Melrose, but really do kind of have a reach kind of out and around from there. So I'll come now to the priority funding tracks. This is important because in order to receive funding or to partner with us, we do ask that you are active in one or more of these tracks. So under track 1, overcoming trauma and life adversity, this is really an area where we have a lot of internal expertise, but we've partnered with folks who are doing services around interventions or strength-based services, education, training. Under track 2 for elevating high-risk youth and vulnerable communities, we've done a lot of work with school programs or summer programs, working with folks on violence prevention. For track 3, restoring dignity and quality of care for adults living with chronic conditions, we've done some partnerships with senior centers, councils on aging. So we have, a lot of kind of activities-based things to kind of help with, physical and mental health for seniors to a large extent. For our 4th track is we have advancing inclusivity in the arts. And for this, we target traditionally underrepresented artists or audiences that may be new to the arts, and just kind of looking at this from a new perspective, and what different ways can you unite different cultures or art forms, and that can be performance art, visual art, runs the gamut. So I know a lot of folks have programs that intersect various tracks, and that's great. And so we'll be talking a little bit more about some other examples of folks that we've worked with in the past. But I did want to pause for a second, since this is kind of an important piece, and just see if anybody had any questions about our priority tracks before we go to the next part.
Just to clarify, on your 2nd track, elevating high-risk youth and vulnerable communities, when you say vulnerable communities, is that limited to youth as well?
It's not, no. So so it really can be, any sort of marginalized group. So it can be people of color, LGBTQ. It really is open to individuals, communities, families.
And just a quick question about the overcoming trauma and life adversity. Would you also consider use of art in addressing trauma or expressing or healing from?
Absolutely. And I can let Joseph speak to that if you'd like as well, because I know that's his wheelhouse.
Yes, we love the intersection of the tracks, especially when track 4 is used for healing purposes, or for, in terms of track 1, so healing trauma or bridging communities, building community, sort of bridging divides in communities related to track 2. And just to add to what Lauren said for track 2, immigrants, BIPOC communities, are all, youth vulnerable to suicide, so the risk communities are thought of somewhat broadly and are not limited to youth.
Sorry, any others? Didn't mean to advance before we checked if there was more. All right, then we'll go ahead and come over to talking about this year's eligibility. So I believe everyone from this call today is from one of these target communities. We have, as you saw before, kind of the broad area that we do provide partnerships and grants to. But each year we have kind of a rotating set of communities. And so for this year, we are targeting Chelsea, Everett, Malden, and Salem. And as I mentioned before, nonprofits and municipal run programs are eligible if they're in the funding tracks. But I did also want to mention that other communities are invited to apply as well, and we'll be happy to take a look at those applications, and we'll consider them on an individual basis. But we do prioritize folks that are coming from these communities within our catchment area. So, but it's something to keep in mind for future years as well, in case your community isn't in one of the target areas, but you have something really cool, then we would still be interested in hearing about it.
Lauren, can I just ask a quick question? This is Liz from Children's Room. If we are not located in one of the target communities, but we're serving families, children, teens from those communities, does that qualify? I know you said you'll serve other communities, but obviously we're based in Arlington, but we serve a lot of families from Chelsea, Everett, Malden, and some from Salem. Does that?
That qualifies, and the more it qualifies, and the more your proposal is focused on one of those communities, the better. So as an example, Malden YMCA has received a 3-year grant from us, and which, by the way, I shouldn't even say that. I'd want to encourage everybody to apply for the max award, max number of years, because we give the least amount of those out. But their 3-year grant, and each year was focused on a city other than Malden. So programming in Medford, programming in Everett, and so on. And so that's definitely something you can do. Sometimes services are more, you may be serving youth who come to you in Arlington from, a variety of cities, and then you can emphasize that in your application as well.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, so this is one of those awful slides with way too many words on it, but I promise they're important. And as I said, this information is all on our website, and I'll send this out to you as well. But this is a snapshot of the different types of support that are offered by the Foundation Trust. And so you can kind of compare the partnership grants, which is what today we're mostly talking about because that has the upcoming deadline. But compare them with our small gifts program as well. So I'll speak just briefly to the small gifts. They have a separate application period that will be in the fall for general operating support. So if you are interested in applying just to kind of help out your program in general, then we will accept applications this fall for that. But we do have kind of event-based funding that's available on a rolling basis. So if you have something that's upcoming, those can be applied for at any time. And for small gifts, it's a little bit less in terms of the requirements that are asked of you. Would still need a letter of inquiry, and then we have a number of acknowledgements and kind of press release requirements that we can speak to in a moment as well. And just promoting things on social media and whatnot. But I just wanted to make sure that that was on your radar. We're not speaking a ton to that today, but those are available from the foundation as well. For the partnership grants, those are anywhere from $1,000 up to $10,000 per year with the potential for renewal, and that's something that we look at just based on how the partnership went, what the program goals are, what the merit and need are, and what resources are available from the Foundation Trust. Eligible organizations, I believe I said before, are nonprofits and municipal run programs. And what we're looking for the eligible programming are really kind of innovative programs or something that could be designed and implemented alongside the Foundation Trust. As an operating foundation, we're positioned to be able to do that and kind of help boost your capacity, and we're excited to get involved with you. So that's something that we're really emphasizing this year that we haven't done officially in the past, but we've had some strategic partners like that, and we're looking to expand upon that this year. So that's something to keep in mind. We're going to dive into that in a little more detail soon, and you can ask some questions about how that relates to you specifically too, if you need to. But just to give you a sense of what the process will be, if you're looking into one of these partnership grants where you really want to be involved with us, you do have the option to get in touch with us beforehand and kind of bounce some ideas off of each other just to see what is possible. And so that would be kind of the first step in the process, followed by a letter of inquiry, which is due at the beginning of May. And then if you're selected, then we'll kind of hash out what the expectations are and what the roles would be. And then, we figure out, who's designing, who's implementing this program. And then as with the small gifts, there are acknowledgements and some reporting requirements with the grant. The acknowledgements are shown here on the side as well. So press release, social media, including Foundation Trust logo, all pretty standard stuff. But I also wanted to mention there's a little note down at the bottom that we also offer training and resource development. I know that that's kind of a little footnote on the slide, but it's also an important component of what we can offer. And I don't know, Joseph, if you wanted to talk a little bit about what some of that has looked like in the past, or what the kind of trainings are that are available.
Well, and when you get a little bit further along, because I'm sure there'll be questions about the partnerships.
All right, so before we dive into the more on the partnerships, does anybody have any questions about kind of the nuts and bolts of the grants? All right, so we'll go ahead and hop in. So we are prioritizing active partnerships, and the way that we've thought about this is sort of on this continuum. And so, you know, starting down at the smaller side where it's kind of red, we're thinking that, you know, for folks that are applying only for operating support that are, you know, for smaller amounts, those would fall under our small gifts program and don't necessarily fall within our discussion today. But then as you move along the spectrum, kind of up through the yellow and into the green, the way it kind of translates into the grants would be, if you're in the green, it's more partnership, more involvement with the Foundation Trust, whether that's program design, implementation, being involved in trainings. So that'll be kind of, the more involved the Foundation Trust is, then, you know, you're a little bit farther along on the green side, and the more possibility for funding there is. So we'll be weighting the scoring to favor the applicants that are seeking more of a partnership this year. So we'll talk, I have some more examples about this too, just to kind of give you a sense of like what they could look like. But here, like in the orange, if the Foundation Trust is the primary or the sole project funder for, you know, an event or something, or a speaker series, you know, then that can be something that's called out that still could receive money and support. But as you get farther along and have an increased level of involvement, so whether maybe the Foundation Trust is involved in a planning committee for some program, then that could be a little bit farther along, or actually being involved in the project design. We've had a number of different things with Follow Your Art Community Studios in Melrose, where we've been involved in creating residencies for artists. And so we've been involved in crafting what the application would look like and the types of artists that we're targeting. And then, you know, all the way up beyond that. So as I mentioned before, the partnership opportunities, it doesn't have to be funding alone. We really have some in-house expertise and capacity that we are more than happy to share and help where we can. And if we're able to identify things that work for both of us, then that's great. We have a couple of ideas listed here, but this isn't limited at all. So we're open to other suggestions of different kinds of partnerships, but some of the things we've done before are just working together on the program design or the implementation. I mentioned before the training and resource development. If you could do an exclusive project funded by the Foundation Trust with naming rights. So we've had a couple of things where you know, it could be the backpack program of the Foundation Trust, just kind of to get that kind of notation in there. We've also done challenge matches. So these are just a couple of ideas, and those are things that we're happy to work with you on to find the best fit. But just wanted to put those out there. And Joseph, I don't know if here maybe you wanted to talk a little bit more about the expertise that we have in-house.
Let's go to the next slide and then I will.
Sure. Do you want to take this one then, or do you want me to?
Sure, I'll do it. And so when we're using the term partnership, we're using it in a specific way. It's not semantics. And so, you know, especially for Julia, you know, for the grant writers, as you're thinking about this, it's common language in grant applications to say we consider all of our funders partners, We send them quarterly reports and to apprise them on what we're doing. That level of partner if that's the extent of a partnership, that's going to put the application in the small gift category, which means it's basically not going to score high enough to be in contention for a grant. And so we're talking about actual operating partnerships. These have really varied to content development or co-development of content in areas where the Foundation Trust has expertise. The Rehearsal for Life is an example of that, where we've been working intensively with them this year, creating scripts related to trauma and grief for their theater program, involvement on planning committees and developing speaker series, as Lauren's been doing with the Melrose Human Rights Commission. She mentioned the Follow Your Art example. The Revere Police Activity League, one of our associates, Dr. Jana Presley, is doing training with the police department and with the police, the school liaisons, and their summer camp program for youth on trauma. She's also doing outreach and training for some of our other applicants on trauma and women's issues for programs that involve emergency housing for women, for a church that has in Roxbury that's incorporated mental health services on site for their members. So the more active the partnership, those will be the kind of grants we prioritize. Other groups that are smaller that really need assistance in areas where we don't have expertise. So Lindholm for Women did their first ever challenge match at their annual fundraiser, and we were the sponsor of that challenge match. So it can be financial, the partnership, but it's distinctive. So if you're basically trying to cover your operating costs and are looking for a medley of funders to cover your certain division as a $100,000 budget, and you're seeking 10 to 12 or sponsors to contribute to that, so that you can run the programming that you normally run, that would be in our small gift category. If you're creating new programming or expanding programming or want to partner with us to generate new programming, that's more of what we're focusing on at this point in terms of our grant applications.
I think this is probably a good point to stop and ask if anyone has any questions.
I have a question. I was wondering if you had an idea, sort of a range of organizational budget size that you were looking at in terms of, the size of a partner that you're sort of having a preference for.
That's a great question. We don't want to rule anyone out, because we have funded larger organizations, but it's usually in those cases, it's usually that the fiscal parent is a larger nonprofit, Mass General Hospital. But within, it could be, but within that, there's a program, and the program is pretty focused and responsible for its own budget, and and trying to do something really specific. Or there's an example now, hasn't been announced yet. COVID threw off our 2020 cycle. So some of the awardees are kind of in this mid-cycle process. They're not listed in our 2020 recipients, and they're not in the pool that you'll be in. They were sort of late in process because a lot of programs were on pause. And so there's a larger mental health organization in Massachusetts, one of the largest, but their application was to provide a specific type of trauma treatment that Medicaid doesn't cover, and to be able to make that available to, that's normally that's something that someone would only be able to access in private practice, resourced individuals, primarily white individuals in Massachusetts seeking therapy in the suburbs. And this was an inner city program that had clinicians trained in the specialty intervention, but Medicaid isn't able to cover it. And so they, even though they're a large organization, they had a really focused application, could we support providing these specialized trauma services to their high need, under-resourced community? And so even though they were, 10 to 100 times larger than many of our other applicants, the project they wanted us to fund was very specific and wouldn't have been feasible otherwise. And so it was awarded. And that being said, we have a soft spot for the smaller to medium-sized nonprofits that need to rely on gifts and fundraising to operate versus in general let's say a large nonprofit that really runs a surplus with state contracts, and where our gift would be a drop in the bucket, or unless we're doing a large gift, a hospital or university, our smaller grants wouldn't make a meaningful difference to a large medical center or university. And so we're going to, for this size of grant, we're looking for organizations where the amount of funding and the degree of our partnership, whether it's resource development or training or planning, really helps move things forward or advance that programming. So hopefully that answers your question.
I have a question about resource development. When you talk about resource development, what exactly would think of in that category? And the other question is, it seems that in processing the applications, you're looking for an intersection of common mission and projects that you can, with your expertise, sink your teeth into, and that would further your mission through some smaller nonprofit. So it's kind of like the magic of the intersection of intention, maybe. I don't know.
It's a great question and a great observation, and not entirely true. So we have limited specialization, for instance, in elder care. And if a program, and we fund many elder care programs, and if an elder care program or working with adults with chronic conditions wanted us to help them develop some programming or some resources or a family guide on supporting family members with Alzheimer's, or something that's outside of our specialty area, where we couldn't provide that piece of training or technical assistance or resource development, but it's in one of our tracks, then we would work with them to identify partner with expertise that we would support through the grant to be able to do the piece that we can't do. So it doesn't have to be that magic alignment. Of course, it's fun for us when that happens. In terms of what we mean by resources, that could be a curriculum, it could be a fact sheet, it could be, it could be a video. So we've been doing videos in partnership with the Amesbury Council on Aging and the Melrose Council on Aging and the Melrose TV station on helping elders who are isolated during the pandemic cope with chronic stress. We developed a number of print resources that have been disseminated worldwide now through our educational resource website, complextrauma.org, on COVID and coping with COVID, helping a child and adult complex trauma survivors cope with the added stressors of COVID. And so the product development or resource development would be in line with our tracks, and what that looked like. Is it a print resource? Is it a live training? Is it a video? Is it, is it a script? And that we're, like I said, we're co-developing some script, building in sort of mental health expertise into an engaging improvisational theater script in partnership with Rehearsal for Life in Boston. So what that resource looks like can vary pretty widely. So we're flexible in that regard.
Any other questions from folks of what this might look like for you or how it would work in practice? All right. So I did also want to share a little bit about expectations of our partners. So we ask that our partners put together a media release that will be shared with local newspapers, online and print editions. We also do some of our own articles, and we would ask that folks would contribute to those either, with quotes or examples from the programs, sometimes testimonials from folks who have been involved in the programming. We'll do them kind of community-based, or sometimes we'll even do a spotlight article on an individual or a specific program. So we share those on our website and social media, and we ask that our partners do the same. And we will also have a reporting requirement where folks will just kind of weigh in on, how many individuals you served, whether expectations were met, pretty standard stuff. And we ask also, where possible, if you share photos with us as well. So I wanted to share too, just so folks have a good view of what's expected and what to look for going forward. If you submit a letter of inquiry, these are the things that our review committee will be looking at. And so they'll be checking, how well aligned you are with one or more of the priority tracks, looking at potential for a successful partnership, just in terms of, what alignment there is and what capacity you have and we have, the feasibility of it. What are you trying to bite off more than we all can chew, the merit and the need of the program. So, those are the different pieces that go together, but I'm not on the review committee, but can say that they really do look at it holistically and try to get a good sense of the organization and how things would work out in practice. So we really do want it to be a positive partnership for everybody. So, so we really take the time to do it well. So, and there's a note on here that's important because we have gotten applications for this in the past. We do not fund or subsidize salaried positions. And so if it's a question of whether or not you can get some added funding to bring on or expand a program just by adding more staff or something, that's usually something that we're not able to look at. So just so you know, going into that's something that won't be considered. So wanted to share also just the overview, the deadlines that are coming up. I think we're about 6 weeks out from our partnership grant deadline of May 7th. So, but you can submit anytime before that, and all of the requirements and whatnot of, what we ask you to send us just in terms of budget and the questions that we want you to answer. All of those are spelled out on the website. If you go to foundationtrust.org/apply, and we'll have a chance then also to connect with you if you have any questions. In the meantime, as I mentioned, if you are applying for one of these kind of more collaborative partnership grants, that we can connect in advance to talk through ideas that you may have. And so you can feel free to reach out to me at any point, and I'll be happy to share things internally and we can see what we can connect on and what we can build before we get into kind of the official letter of inquiry pieces. So if that's of interest to folks, you can just feel free to respond to the email that had the links for today's call. The letters of inquiry will be sent to this administrator website, but if you send them to me, they'll get to the right place too. So no worries there. I guess before we wrap up, I wanted to see if anybody else had anything to add. I think Joseph wanted to say something too.
Just a small thing I'm realizing we don't have listed here. So resource development obviously would be considered as a major kind of project that goes in on the partnership grant cycle. But just where we note here that if you have an event and you're looking for a sponsor for your annual fundraiser, that those requests can come in at any time, as can requests for like a one-off training. So if you're looking for us to do ongoing consultation, program development with an organization, that would need to go in during the grant cycle. But if you have an annual conference and you're looking for a speaker in a topic that we have expertise, and we can support that, and it's in October, and you ask us in July, that's fine. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to wait for the grant cycle to ask for, for us to come do some training or outreach, or if you have a parent, maybe your program has a quarterly meeting series for parents, and you want to have a talk for parents on trauma or signs of symptoms of trauma or supporting youth, vulnerable youth. That's the kind of thing you can ask us, reach out to us at any time to try to assist you with.
And Joseph, maybe we can talk a little bit about the timeline for folks too, after the May 7th letter of inquiry deadline, kind of what are the next steps there, and when can they expect to hear from us?
So our intention, and again, last year really got thrown off because is to review the grants, the letters of inquiry, and over about a 4 to 6 week period. And then we'll start reaching out to programs. Some will receive a straightforward letter of acceptance and then ask you to supply some additional documentation. So the letter of inquiry is the competitive part of the application. And so if what you applied for we're straightforwardly in support of it as is, then that's what you'll hear from us. If we're looking to make a modification or revision to what you've proposed, that's then you'll hear that from us. Or if we're not able to fund it during this cycle, or we're maybe parlaying it to a small gift, we try to get those responses out within 6 weeks of the application date. If you're applying for time-sensitive programming, so you're running a summer camp, that should be emphasized in the application. And we're going to get back to those programs first. It's not a separate pot of funding, and they don't get prioritized over the other applicants, but those are the ones we'll respond to first, and line up the contract in time for your summer programming. Otherwise, the contracts are generally issued throughout the summer and the funds are released and generally in the fall for programming that's, let's say, fall to spring or over a project year. The funding would primarily be released in the fall. Depending on the size of the grant and the nature of the programming, the funding might be released in 2 installments, this fall and then next spring, depending on the structure of what you've proposed. You also, if you do apply for multi-year award, you may be funded for multi-year, you may be funded for 1 year with the ability to then reapply, conditional on how the first year goes. Again, last year, the vast majority of the applicants were not able to carry out what they proposed to do because of COVID. And so that slowed the process down considerably. With that in mind, what we're looking for programs to do this year is to apply for things that you have a strong sense that you're going to be able to implement. So if you're not operational yet, or you're not open, or you're not able to provide in-person services, but the grant is for in-person services, we're going to take that into account. In general, it's not in the slides. We're going to be more interested in in-person services than funding of remote Zoom-based services, whether it's for social services, the arts, or whichever track. So what we're looking to support, people getting back into the community, especially people have been so isolated that if you're able to provide live programming, in-person programming this fall into next year, in whatever track, that's what we're going to be most interested in looking at this point. So we're not primarily going to be prioritizing Zoom-based programming in this cycle. We, as all of us did more of that this past year than we had ever imagined doing, and we want to get back to in-person human contact and supports.
We want to see you.
Exactly.
If we have questions, both with the letter of inquiry and maybe just little things coming in from the side as we're trying to do this, who do we contact?
Yeah, if you just wanna send an email to manager@foundationtrust.org, that'll come to me, and I'll do my best to take care of you.
Oh, okay, great.
We may, after you submit, we very well may be reaching out to you and your team if the project's in consideration, and we may be requesting to set up a meeting, which at this point may be a Zoom meeting, but still, to talk through what you've proposed, and maybe, especially if we feel the need to make some revisions to it. If, as you're applying, you're stuck and really unclear, is this the right match, or is this thing we want to do, does it fit with what you'd be interested in? Again, I would start with an email to Lauren. If the questions you raise are not ones that are simply or readily answerable and need to be more of a dialogue, then we may offer to meet, probably by Zoom, prior to your application coming in as well.
And there are a lot of
I have two questions.
Oh, sorry, of course, go ahead.
Sorry. Two questions. One is, can a fiscally sponsored program in the organization providing the sponsorship apply separately for different initiatives within the same grant cycle? And the second question is, do you have more detailed list of the subjects and topics that you're able to provide presentations, talks, and trainings on? Thank you.
That's a great question. The answer is yes, absolutely. So a fiscal parent or a program that a fiscal organization that runs 5 different programs could submit 5 applications and for separate programs if you really wanted to. What I would again, partnerships that are active, that are program specific. What I would not encourage, which has happened before, is for a larger organization that offers the same program in 5 cities to submit the exact same application for each of those 5 cities. At most, we're going to support one of those. So if the proposal is distinct, then multiple proposals can come from the same organization. And we may say, you might submit 3 and we might say no to one, yes to one, and for another one, we might want to table it till next year or revise it in some way. So if you have the wherewithal, time, and resources to submit multiple proposals, you're welcome to do that. In terms of list of specialty topics, we don't have a definitive list, and I'm disinclined to generate one because sometimes we might be able to do something that we wouldn't normally think to list. But what I would encourage you to do is to go to our educational resource website, complextrauma.org, and just peruse it. Everything in there other than links and art, well, a lot of the articles are written by myself and Dr. Presley and our colleagues, but all the essays, the core topics, the essays, will give you I think a nice feel for the areas in which we have expertise.
I had a question, just a very simple one. You said in the footnote that you would not cover expanded salary of existing salaries or for the agency, but would that preclude, let's say, hiring artists, or it's not a salary, but it's a fee for their work?
So that's a wonderful question. No, it would not preclude that. It would not preclude if you wanted to have your program evaluated and you wanted to spend, have an evaluator. If you wanted to have a fellowship, the piece about salaries is that we don't want to set up a situation, because the grants in general are not multi-year, and even when they are multi-year, it's 2 or 3 years. So we don't want to create a new position that ends when the grant cycle ends. And so that being said, a program can apply for seed money for an initiative, but we really want to sort of see how that funding is going to support the initiative overall. When we receive an application saying, well, we do a lot of good work in area X and Y, and we want to hire an additional person to do more of that good work, our funding then doesn't sustain anything. If once the funding runs out, what happens to that position? If it's seed money and the application talks about how through this seed money, this is going to enable us to pilot this, and then we're going to go to this other funding source, or we're going to be able to generate revenue from this service, and here's our business model and how your support will enable us to sustain beyond that time period, then we'll be interested in it.
Thank you.
But yes, if you said, well, we really want to have a, you know, we have some youth-based programming, and we want to have some, you know, artists of color create a mural, and we need to pay them for their time. Well, that's not a salaried position. It's a product, and you're going to use some of the funds to cover the costs of developing that product. That's absolutely fine.
All right, any other questions from folks?
No, you've done a nice job of explaining things. Appreciate it.
I know it's kind of a lot of information to throw at you. So this is all on our website. And so there are some other frequently asked questions and whatnot too. So I encourage you to kind of look through there as you're preparing your application and see the tips there of what'll help make for a successful application. But yeah, if there's anything else that comes to mind, then you know where to find me. So with that, here's the website again, where all of the information is. You'll find contact details. You'll find this presentation, not immediately, but shortly. And yeah, if anything else comes to mind, then please don't hesitate to be in touch.
Great. Thank you.
Have a great night,
Thank you so much,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Enjoy the warm weather.
Thank you